Right, what have I got today? Boosh, it's a doubler. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the two into one review because basically they're very, very similar. There's a slight difference in the UV version as opposed to the standard version. So I'll put that to one side just for a second and then I'll bring that in at the end to explain the differences. But other than that, they're very, very similar. Or they should be anyway. So we'll put that to one side. Okay, so what is this? This is the XTAR T1. Now, as you know, I'm quite a big fan of the XTARs. I've got a couple of XTAR chargers. I've got a portable XTAR charger. But I'm not going to let that cloud my decisions on this. I'm going to be open and have a proper look at this. And before I quickly start this, I'd just like to say XTAR were kind enough to send me these for test purposes on the understanding that I would do a honest review, which is fine, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm happy to look at them. And like I say, I've never had a bad XTAR product, so I'm looking forward to having a look at this. I've been testing this. I carried that one for about, let's have a think now, about half a week. And I carried this one for 2 weeks on its own and on another split link, on my Nitecore split link that I've got. So I've tested these thoroughly and let's get on with it. So first things first, instead of coming in one of these awful cardboard boxes that you normally get, it is a metal tin, which I'm a big fan of. If I remember way back in the good old days when I was just a young trail trekker, I think I got my TrueNight Ti3 in a case like this, and I still use it. I've got it somewhere. I should have really found it, but I've got it somewhere, and I use it to keep little bits and pieces in and little connectors and things for soldering irons and things like that. So nice. It's a little bit of added bonus that you get this. So big fan of getting a proper case, because these cardboard things, you just end up throwing them away anyway. So anyway, this is the XTAR T1, and like I say, there is a UV version, but never mind. We'll go into that in a moment. So let's quickly see what you get in the box. So like I say, a nice box. You've got a viewing thing there. It looks like they've put this in. This is one of these things where you scratch this, and you don't win the lottery if you scratch this. This is just to see if it's a copy or not. So under here, you should get some extras, so pour them out. So there's your empty tin. I will be keeping that, so instead of saying boosh, get that in the bin, I'm going to go whoosh, put that into one side. Okay, so what do you get in the box here? So there's your charging cable, which I'll go into in a moment when I show you the charging. And you get one of these. Obviously this is to attach to it, so we'll take that out, get rid of that. Obviously, this split link section here would go around the tail section of the light. So there's the tail section there. It's a sort of piece of aluminum here, and you would put the split link on there, and you'd put that on your keychain. I'm not the biggest fan of these ones. I find these can be a little bit weak sometimes, and if you press them, it can flip off in your pocket, and then when you take your keys out, it's left in your pocket. So I didn't use this. I used a Nitecore, but you get it free anyway. It's not the end of the world. So put that to one side. There's your little book, which I really can't be bothered to read. That is in Chinese, so I presume the other side is in English. Yes. So if you really want to, you can pause that and have a read. I can't be bothered. Introduction, features. There's your parameters if you want to pause that. Interestingly, instead of using just a normal lithium-ion cell, you'll notice they're using a lithium polymer cell. The basic general guide is if it's a lithium polymer, you can recharge them a lot more times. Although, you know, on a normal lithium-ion, you're getting 300 plus charges, so I can't imagine that being an issue, but it's nice to see. I think it's probably a better choice. So lithium polymer cell, although it doesn't tell you the milliamp rating. I'm presuming it's around 120-ish, in line with cells which you would get in lights like this. So you've got the Royvon, I think this is the A8 Aurora. This is the Nitecore Tiki glow-in-the-dark version, and this is the Jetbeam mini one. So they have around 120-ish milliamp hour cells, but it could be slightly lower in this because it's lithium polymer rather than lithium ion, but we'll see, and we'll look at the run times. So like I say, if you want to look at that, I can't be bothered, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, whatever, right. I will get that in the bin, boosh. Okay, so let's go over some of the specs. So XTAR T1, now it's using the Cree XP-G3, a little bit of an older LED. So you can see it right at the bottom there, behind that TIR there. It's in line with what you get in the, I think this is the Jetbeam mini one. They also use the XP-G3, which allows up to 500 lumens, so pretty good. I mean, some of the ones, you know, you've got like the Nitecore, I think this is using an Osram P8 LED at the bottom there, so you only get about 300 lumens. So you're able to get 500 on max on turbo, and bear in mind, because it's turbo and it will heat up slightly and use the battery rather rapidly, it has a 30-second step down. So if I hold that now for turbo, after 30 seconds, it's automatically going to go boop and turn off, but then you can just press it again. But I think that's an important thing they've done there, because you're using a lot of juice at that rate, and if it accidentally gets pressed on in the pocket, it'll turn off, which is nice to see. So maximum 500 lumens. Now, interestingly, it's a USB Type-C, which I'm a big fan of, because if you remember, I whinged and complained about the Nitecore Tiki. I've got one of these, not the glow-in-the-dark version, but the normal version, and look, it's a micro USB, which I don't like. I don't think in this day and age we really need those. Whereas on the Jetbeam Mini one, it is Type-C, so it's omnidirectional. Doesn't matter which way you put it up, it will work. And the same is true for this. So we'll have a quick look at the body, and then I'll show you that. So just some markings there. There's your reference number there. I presume this is number 149. I don't know. T1, nice anodized aluminum. Anodized is just where they just dip it in a solution and it attracts like a paint-like substance to the surface there. So it's pretty nice. Actually, it's quite light. It's only 18.5 grams, whereas lights like these are around 23, 22, 23, 24 grams. So these are actually heavier than this. I don't know whether that's because they've used like a stainless steel bezel. Even though this is plastic and non-metallic, you'd think this would weigh less, but this actually weighs less. So even though it looks sort of militarized, and it's very hard wearing because it's metal in every single direction, obviously, apart from the lens there, but it's well protected. It's very light, so it feels pretty good in the hands. And as you can see, there's the button there. And then if we zoom in, I'll zoom in there. Can you see this section here? There's a couple of extra lights here. Now you're probably thinking, what's going on there? Well, the one on the left, interestingly, if you see it's segmented into 3 sections. So you've got like a red, a green, and a blue section. You can see the red section top left there. And then if we move to the next LED on the right there, far right, you've got a UV. And I think off the top of my head, the UV mode on this light is using between 395 to 400 nanometers wavelength. And we'll discuss that again when I go to the UV version, because that uses a slightly different wavelength. Although to the eyes, there's not a lot to be seen there. It certainly functions exactly the same. So we'll zoom out there. Okay, so very interesting. I like the way they've done this. You could argue that this is better. This looks cooler because look, you can see all the internals. There's the battery in the silver package there, and you can see all the circuit board there. Yeah, that is quite interesting, but I think this also has a nice design aesthetic to it. It looks pretty cool and futuristic. I like this. So moving on as we rotate around here, here is the USB, and it's like I say, it's Type-C. Now, I've always said this in all of my reviews. I'm not the biggest fan on these flaps, but I understand the point of them. They just allow quick access. This didn't flap open when I've been using it. I haven't had any issues. It hasn't come off or anything. And to open it, you literally just do that with your thumb. That's very easy. So what's happening is that section there is catching. In fact, this section here catches, and then it just lifts the whole thing. I would like to have seen this go a little bit deeper. Can you see how it's not very deep, but it does rotate easily to get out the way of charging. So we'll just try the cable. Now this is the cable that comes with it, so Type-C, you can put it in either way up, it doesn't matter. Plug that in, and then you've got a Type-A, so normal USB. So we'll plug this into my trusty XTAR here. If I can get it the right way up, there you go. And then let's look at what's happening here. So on the light itself, you get a red light. When it's fully charged, that will change to green, and you know it's full. And in regards to charging, when it is charging, you can still use it. Watch. There. That's on strobe section there, sorry. I'll change that. There you go. So it does work whilst charging, which is a nice feature. Not all lights have that, and that is helpful, especially if you're camping or anything like that. So ignore this figure. You can see it charges at around 5 volts. A bit of a trickle charger, 0.1 amp, although they're saying on their website it should charge to full within about half an hour. Okay, well, maybe it does, but if that's the case, it mustn't have a very large battery in it, which is fine because it's a keychain light, and the run times are decent. I have checked them. Okay, so it does charge, and you can use it whilst charging. So take that out. If I can get it out, come on, call on all my strength. There you go, boom, right, nice tight connection, or I'm weak, right, so let's close that, and we'll discuss a little bit more on this light. Okay, so secondary modes. So I will show you the main mode and then secondary modes, but I think it's interesting that we'll cover this. So in regards to the main modes, you've got a number of functions. So on is one press and off. and long press for off. Strange that they've picked that, whereas I would have preferred maybe to have had long press on and then one press off, so it's less likely to be knocked on. But you could argue that it doesn't really make a lot of difference. If it's going to get knocked, it's going to get knocked. Okay, fair enough. But they've chosen to do that. So one press on, and then to cycle through the modes, you just press the button. So there you go. So at the moment there, we are at Moonlight, they call that. Some call it Eco, some call it ultra low on, you know, lights like this, but they're calling this Moonlight. You get around 2 lumens. That's fine. I would have preferred maybe just to seen 1, just to give you an ultra long run time. At 2 lumens on their figures, they're saying you'll get I think it's 243 minutes, basically around 4 hours on that. So pretty good, nice to see. And then if you press it once more, you'll go straight up to low. Low is pretty good. I did some testing around a riverbed, and even on low I was able to go for a walk, as long as I was careful. So low is 50 lumens and you get 109 minutes, which is brilliant. And as you can see, the beam's pretty good. Now, if you look very, very carefully at my hand there, you see in the middle, there's a slight dip in brightness. I'll move it around so you can see it there. Can you see? So you've got, it's harder to see it there. Can you see there's a slight, but that's somewhat of an artifact of this light. But as you pull away, it's not an issue. You see it's gone. To a degree anyway. And I didn't have any issues, especially outside in a natural environment or an urban environment. There was no issues. But at low level, you might see slight artifact. I just wanted to point that out. If you look there, can you see? As I twist it, can you see how that slight dip in brightness moves almost like around a clock? See? It's at the top position there, and then it's at the bottom position. So slight beam artifact there. I don't know what's causing that, but it is there. So we'll go through the modes. Right, so we're at low there, so Moonlight, then low, which is 50 lumens, 109 minutes, medium, 150, nice and bright, 52 minutes. You'd probably use that for most tasks. I always argue around 150 to 300 is where you get most of your work done, and then high, that's the highest setting. So 300 lumens, 19 minutes. And as you can see, it's quite a white light. I will show you some beam comparisons in a moment with some other lights, and it's slightly whiter than a lot of the other ones, even though it isn't the same sort of XP G3 lumen, LED. There's a slight difference between something like the Jetbeam Mini one. And then the next mode is strobe, which I'll cover slightly there because I don't want to annoy people. So you just get one strobe mode, there's no extras. You can't see, well, you've got tactical strobe and party strobe and all this. They're just keeping it simple. I don't know why they didn't have that like a 4 presses away or something, because the whole point of strobe is it's for like tactical purposes. So I don't know why it's all the way at the end of low, Moonlight, low, medium, high. So I don't know why they would do that, but it's there if you want it. And then go back again and we'll turn it off. And then obviously you have turbo if you hold that down. So from high you get 19 minutes on 300, but this is turbo, so 500 lumens, that's your maximum, but you only get 9 minutes on that. And that's about around what you'd get for these lights, 9-10 minutes on turbo, things like that. So pretty good, pretty good. So what I want to do is I'll put that here, and then let's have a look. What have we got here? So we've got the Tiki. We'll put the Tiki here. And then the Jetbeam, is this a Jetbeam? Yes, Jetbeam, we'll put that there. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to discuss the beam. So I'll bring up 3 pictures here. So I'll bring up 3 pictures, right? So you've got the Nitecore Tiki on the left, and then you've got the Jetbeam, and then you've got this light, the XTAR. So let's just have a quick look at what can we discern from what's going on here. Yes, I understand that the Tiki is only outputting 300 lumens. They're all running on turbo, whereas the Jetbeam and the XTAR T1 are outputting 500 on turbo because they're using the Cree XP G3, whereas this is the Osram P8. Okay, so what can we see? Well, straight off you can see on the Nitecore, I would argue, it has a more saturated look. To me, that looks greener, for want of a better word, and the tint looks slightly more sunlightish. I prefer that, and you may or may not notice, if you look very carefully, in fact I'll highlight it, if you look on the Tiki, you see that the furthest away tree there, or the barrel of that tree there, is quite prominent, okay, suggesting that the Osram has slightly better throw. Now if you compare that to the other 2 pictures, there's slightly less throw, isn't there, on that tree trunk there, just slightly, but I just wanted to point that out. So it appears that although the Jetbeam and the T1 are brighter, they've got 200 more lumens, the throw doesn't seem to be as much, but you can certainly argue that the overall peripheral light is more on the T1 and the Jetbeam. And in regards to the comparison between the Jetbeam and the T1, you can see that the T1 is slightly whiter, I would say. I would say that that's slightly whiter than the Jetbeam. So really, in fact, hang on, let's get rid of these pictures. Poof, there you go. Okay, so let's think about this. So I would argue you seem to get more throw from this, but less overall light. So put that to one side. And in regards to these two, I would say that this is slightly whiter than this, but you're getting similar or comparative results. Okay, so put that to one side. So I just wanted to point that out because it's very interesting when you compare things side to side. I really like to do that, and it helps people make an informed buying decision, and that's what I'm interested in here. Okay, so let's talk about the secondary modes. So you know that that's on and then long press for off. So a double press will allow you to use these. So we'll do that now. So a double press, and then it'll take you to these secondary modes. Okay, so what I want to do is I'll cycle through them, and we'll start at the beginning. Okay, right, so in regards to secondary modes, what do you get? Right, you get a red LED, which is pretty good. Now that runs at around 6 lumens. I will note that they're saying 43 minutes. That seems much brighter than the secondary modes you get on these other lights. So the Jetbeam and things like that. These look much brighter to me. Look at that. That's covering the whole of that, no problem. I noticed that outside when I was working on the car and things, you get a lot of light and it seems to spread it quite nicely. Even though there's no spreader or lens on this, you get a nice floody sort of sensation from it. I think they've done that quite well. So that's mode 1, and then it's just 1 click to advance. So that's your red. Like I say, 6 lumens, you get about 43 minutes. And then if you click it will advance within the same LED here. It goes to the green section. Now, about the same, 7 lumens there, although they're saying 52 minutes. I have no idea why you get more on the green. Maybe it's just more power efficient, I don't know. And if you press it once more, you will get blue. There, it goes to blue. So again, quite floody, quite a lot of light coming from that. It's about 5 lumens, and they're saying at least sort of 37 minutes runtime from that. And then moving on from that, you have sub modes to that. So if you press it once more, you get like I suppose you could call that a police mode, maybe, I don't know, almost like a blinker on you would get on a police car or something like that. It combines them all to attract attention for whatever purpose you need that for. And then press it again, and you get a cycle. So it'll cycle slowly between the 3, and it keeps repeating that. And then one more, and you get a flasher. Sometimes they're quite helpful if you're having them hanging from molly webbing, or you want rally points, or other military purposes, or other. I'm sure you can come up with ideas for that, marker purposes. So pretty good. And like I say, run times are okay on them because they're pretty bright. They're not just naff ones where there's a tiny little bit of light coming out and they last all night. Okay, so, and then it will cycle back to the start again. So we'll turn that off. So we know what 1 click is, we know what 2 click is. Let's try 3 clicks. So 3 clicks, 1, 2, 3, takes you straight to the UV. So there's the UV. So can you see that there? The furthest one away there, so UV. Now they're saying that this is running at between 395 to 400 nanometer wavelength. That's a description of the wavelength which makes up the light that's coming from this. So if I find something, in fact, let's try that. You can see it's quite reflective there of UV light. It does work. I've tried it on some bits and pieces. Let's just check if oh, now look, what's that there? It's picking something up there. I think that's a piece of fluff. I've never found a use for these UV things, unless you live in Arizona and you're going looking for scorpions or something like that. I'm not sure what the purpose of UV light is, or if you're trying to get a job with CSI, I don't know. But it's there, and there are people who do use that for checking counterfeit notes, getting their nail varnish to set. Certain glues are UV reactive, I don't know, but you've got that there, and we'll turn that off. And interestingly, the modes that you do use are all memory mode. So memory mode is a time saver. Let's get that out of the way. Okay, right, so we've gone through the main modes, we've gone through the secondary modes. Let's talk about pros and cons. So pros, I think this looks great. It's all metal in all directions apart from obviously the TIR, but it's protected by a nice thick bezel. And in regards to having a thick bezel, it's got a 1.5 meter drop rating, which I think is pretty good. It's all aluminum. It's using a TIR like the other lights do, which is a sensible choice. You're getting a more floody beam. Although, like I say, there was that slight artifact, which I'm not sure what's causing that. I'll probably have to look into that a little bit further. But it's very unnoticeable. I'm being scrutinising here right up close, but you know, if you're using it as a keychain light, you're probably not going to notice that. 1.5 meter drop rating, so they're saying 1.5 meters onto concrete should be fine, no problems, which is nice to see. I mean, on their own website, I mean, I'll bring it up here. They've got a picture of some guy running the light over in a car. I might do that test, but you know, I certainly didn't do that test when I was testing it. I threw it into bags and I threw it into pockets, and I put it into my pocket with keys and other lights and banged it around and threw it on desks. I didn't have any problems, and I certainly can't notice. Let's have a quick look. I don't notice any paint coming off yet. No, I can't see any, which is pretty good. So yeah, so a nice coating, pretty good. It feels quite nice and thick and smooth like some of the Jetbeams. So really, really well done to them so far. Looks great, feels rock solid. It is rock solid, you know, it's metallic. It's very bright for its size. It's in the same league as the Jetbeam, where you're getting up to 500 lumens on turbo, whereas you could argue, oh, you're only getting 300 on the Nitecore Tiki here. Yeah, you do, but as you notice, you seem to get a slight bit more throw maybe, but less peripheral light, so it depends what you want or need. So good price and type C. So there's not a lot to dislike. I mean, in regards to cons, I would say that I've checked their website, I've checked all the literature. I can't find an Ipx rating. So what's an Ipx rating? Well, that just stands for ingress protection, and that's just posh for what can get in or out. So there's no Ipx rating. In regards to that, on their website they do state, don't get this wet, suggesting that at least they're being honest. They're not saying IPX8, way, go diving. You can't, because if this fails, water's going to get in. But you could argue it's a keychain light. How, you know, if you've got this on your keychain, how often do you take your keychain and go deep sea diving? Probably never. Fair enough. But I just want to point that out. There is no IPX rating, suggesting that it's probably around IPX 6 or IPX, maybe 5 or 6, I don't know. Unless I start dunking this in buckets of water and throwing dust and sand at it, I don't know. But I'll probably do some more testing on that. Also, there's no E-lockout, but you could argue the same on other lights. Yes, on the Jetbeam Mini one, you get an E-lockout, but it's useless. You know, you hold this for 8 seconds, turn around, right, now press 3 times, now turn it off again, useless. Whereas on the Tiki, no, they don't have an E-lockout, but you know, it's double press for on and things like that. So maybe they could change the UI and make it a double press for on to make it slightly more safe, or just recess the button. They seem to have enough room. Look how far down the board is there from this open section, the window. They seem to have room. If I was XTAR, I would widen that right to the extremities of this section here, make the button bigger and recess it so it's completely flat unless something protrudes and knocks it. That's what I would do. But that's just me. So no E-lockout, small flap, but I always whinge about flaps, but it does work, and boof, it's got a quick deploy there like that. And it didn't come out the rest of the time I was carrying it, so pretty good. Okay, so we need to give this a mark out of 10, but I just wanted to quickly mention some of the other lights that I tested it against. So here we go, whoosh. So you've got the older lights. I call them older lights because they're starting to fade out now. The AAA, so they're using a traditional AAA battery. These are all the same. I love this one, the Lumen Top EDC01, is it? Yeah, EDC01. It's got a beautiful TIR lens with a nice floody beam. But again, you could argue, is this not too big now in comparison? Look, let's just compare that. Look, much bigger in the pocket, you know. Do you really want that? And bearing in mind, these are all putting out around 100 to 120 lumens, whereas this is putting out 500. It's kind of a no-brainer. What would you pick if you had to pick one? You're automatically going to say, well, I'll just pick this. This will put out 500 lumens, and it's smaller. So, you know, these are good lights. You've got the Jetbeam Jet U, and then you've got the A01 by Astrolux. No, these are all rotary sections, so you turn the light on by rotorizing it, for want of a better term. Brilliant lights, but again, these days I think the market is switching towards this sort of design, as you can see. And then when you want more light, you would, if you thought, well, I don't mind, I want more light and more battery capacity, you could look at things like the I didn't compare them to the Tip 2 or the Tip SE because they're way up in they're dual emitters, and you know they're 720 and 700 lumens. I wanted to keep things commensurate with what these are outputting, and these are similar. I think this is 360 and 380. So this is the old Nitecore Tip, the V1, not the 2 or the SE. Around 360 with a frosted optic. It's still good and a good battery run time, but you've got the daily and demo modes to be contending with, and then you've got the Nitecore Tiny. I still really like this. I mean, look, size wise it's fantastic. Yes, it's wider, but it's not as tall, and you're getting 380 lumens out of this, and it is pretty good. Uses a decent TIR, but you're paying more for this, but it is Nitecore and it's rechargeable, but it's the old-fashioned micro USB. So if you want to move with the times, what you could say is, right, the Nitecore's great, but it's micro USB, so we'll put that out. The Royvons, you get a bit of pulse width modulation, which I'm not going to go into on this review. I'm trying to keep this quick. So really, its only competitor is the Jetbeam Mini one, which uses the same emitter. It has slightly different secondary modes. So the question is, I mean, this looks slightly bigger, but it's lighter. Which do you prefer? So let's line them up at the base there. Can you see it's slightly taller? But it doesn't weigh as much. So really it's a hard decision between those. I think you need to decide for yourself what secondary modes you do and don't need, and how the beam looks. In regards to how the beam looks between the two of these, it looks slightly whiter on this, slightly, but it does sit in it, and maybe a tiny little bit brighter, but that could just be in certain situations in my eyes, maybe, I don't know. But the function basically the same. But I do like this XTAR. I think they've done a great job. I haven't seen any lights from XTAR yet, so I think they've done a pretty good job. So in regards to price, what you get, in regards to the cons being rather small and insignificant, other than worrying about the Ipx rating, but you could say, stop being an idiot, Trailtrek. It's a keychain light. Stop saying what's the Ipx rating. You're not going diving. Yeah, okay, fair enough. But you don't want dust and things getting in. So let's give this a mark out of 10. Okay, so mark out of 10, I would say, for the price and for a simple keychain light, and bear in mind I've been testing it in regards to these other lights, which are very similar, and I've carried it for a couple of weeks. I'm going to give that, I'm going to have to give it a 9, because there's not a lot I would change, other than I would recess the button, and then there's other lights who don't have any lockout. I'll give it a 9 because it's cheap and it does the job and it's light. That's what I like, and it's rock solid. It certainly feels rock solid. So you probably think, well, hang on, you said there was another light. I did. So there's the UV version. So what's the difference? Well, first off, you will notice they look slightly different. So let's compare them side by side. So here's the UV in my right hand here. So the paint's slightly different. And in regards to it's exactly the same, but in regards to the secondary, can you see what they've done here? Instead of having the red, green and blue and then the UV, you just get 3 UV lights. So it's specifically just the secondary is UV only, if that's what you need. And in regards to that, we'll do that as a double click. Oop, turn that off, go for a double click. There you go. You can see it's got 3 rather than the 1 on here. So if we do that on here, turn that, and then 1, 2, 3. See, that's only got 1, and then this has got 3. So is there any other differences? Well, slightly there is. In regards to this one, this uses a 365 to 370 nanometer range wavelength of light. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. They're very, very similar. And as you can see, I can't really tell much of a difference between them there. That's just a slightly different wavelength. This is more in line with the UVs used on the Tiki and things like that. So very similar. I actually prefer this paint to that. I don't know why they didn't just use that paint on both, or have an option black, or this sort of nice it's almost like a cross between purple and a gunmetal. I really like it. Actually makes it look more futuristic. It gives you more of an accent. But you've got that option if you want it. So turn that off. And then turn that off. If I can remember how to use the UI, there you go, turn that off. But other than that, it functions exactly the same. Okay, so like I say, 9 out of 10. It's light, cheap, brilliant. I've got no problems other than maybe add an e-lockout and maybe put the strobe where it's more accessible rather than behind like a cycling UI for the main modes. I don't know. but how often are you going to use that? Probably not very often. So I think they've done a good job. So well done, XTAR. Enough of me waffling. What I've done is I've gone out and I've got plenty of beam shots, so I'll show you those, and I've also compared it in situ with other lights similar to it. So I hope that helps. So enough of me waffling, let's get out.